Welcome to the Church in the Wild podcast. You'll be hearing the words from worship from Sunday, May 31st, 2026, where we nominate one final wild saint, Bryan Stevenson. If you want to learn more about all of our wild saints and our upcoming events and programs, just go to churchinthewild.org. Thanks for listening.
In lieu of a separate nature connection, we are going to have a poem discussing that includes some nature stuff. And it is a spoken word poem by a man named Manuel, who was featured in the book of Bryan Stevenson, who we are sainting today. So this, you'll hear his story. So I'm going to play his reading of this poem now, called Everytime I Breathe.
And I mean never.
After
say,
this
does
commercial
that make
break.
Sense? Does that make sense?
There we go.
Hi, I'm EMA. Hi, I'm Ian Manuel. When I was 13 years old, I was sentenced to the rest of my life in prison. At the age of 15, I was placed in solitary confinement for 18 consecutive years, a place I would stay until I was 33 years old. One day while in solitary, the officers who used PBS as a punishment, they took us out of our cell to put us in the TV room for an hour. And they use PBS as a punishment because prisoners like watch sports and entertainment. They feel PBS would be boring. So this particular day, it backfired on them because there was a documentary called To Be Heard that was on the TV of PBS. And it was about 3 South Bronx teenagers who used poetry to tell their story. I became so inspired that I went back to my cell and I wrote this poem called Everytime I Breathe. It says, every time I breathe, I feel the need to justify my existence, to take this moment that I'm living and enjoy every millisecond in it. My life and my struggles, not many can comprehend it. My desire for freedom burns like a sausage inside a skillet. Tomorrow isn't promised, so I'm thankful for this minute. Though in prison, merely existing, it's like my life has been suspended. But that means it's temporary because I haven't been expelled. And I still got a chance as long as I can in and exhale every time I breathe. Every time I breathe, I'm thankful for the oxygen from the trees. And little things like little bees, they get overlooked until they sting. Every day I'm faced with obstacles that block the progress to my dreams. But the blockades only masquerades like costumes on Halloween. I've been through enough pain to make a sane man just scream. But instead, I take a deep breath and just breathe. Every time I breathe, the cosmos come out of my nostrils like particles of product coming down to your console. My soul is like a chihuahua you didn't include in your carpool. My lungs relax and collapse like a bottom sitting on a bar stool. Every time I breathe. Every time I breathe, I become an intergalactic being, stepping out of character like a chiropractor, snapping peas. I prayed so many times, it's like I got arthritis in my knees, but I still get down and bow my head because I continue to believe that as long as I can breathe, God's going to make a change. And my circumstances are only chances for me to glorify his name. You don't know me, homie, but there's odds I've already overcame. So if praying works, but hurts, then I can stand under the pain. I want to end this part by thanking God for bringing me to these heights. And I make a promise to always honor and cherish this breath of life every time I breathe. every time I breathe. Every time I breathe.
Hi, I'm Dolly, and our wisdom today comes from Bryan Stevenson, who is the nominated today for our saint. Reinhold Niebuhr said, "Love is the motive, but justice is the instrument." And I am persuaded that hopelessness is the enemy of justice, that if we allow ourselves to become hopeless, we become part of the problem. I think you're the problem. There's no neutral place. And if I've inherited anything from the generation who came before me, I have inherited their wisdom about the necessity of hope.
Thank you. And I'm going to introduce our guest speakers for today, Cris and Bradley. Yes, both. Mogensen will be nominating Bryan Stevenson for Wild Sainthood. And
The quote, the good quote. What is it, Bradley? Yep. And what was the other half of that?
Like, well, not culpable in the only outcome.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Bryan Stevenson, he's about a year and a half older than me. We're about the same age here. He never married. He's been married to his job. He's an advocate. Actually, his brother said he's just too busy. And he was, let me give you a little background here. Born in 1959. He was, grew up in Delaware, southern Delaware, and also near Philadelphia. His grandma moved from Virginia, part of the diaspora of the blacks from the South. But his great-grandmother and his great-grandfather were slaves. And Grandma knew a lot of the stories. She grew up in that household, so a lot of that stuff he carried over with him. He spent a lot of time in Montgomery, Alabama, too, so a lot of this firsthand. He talks about being, Brown versus Board of Ed is how we got into public school. You remember the transition? And enabled him to go to Eastern College, a Christian college. Bryan is a devout Christian. He's actually a pretty good preacher, too. I watched him talk about in a commencement address about Paul's conversion. He said, "Convicted felon Paul," which kind of cool, yeah. And he also talked about another address. He talked about the woman that was probably just framed for adultery, and he cast the first stone. He doesn't know how many Christians right now would drop the stones. He actually said that. It's kind of scary. All right. He went to let's see. After Eastern College, he went to Harvard, and he wasn't so sure about being a lawyer. He wanted to stay in school the rest of his life because it was such a great experience. Went to Harvard. He got a degree from Lincoln College in I think public policy, and his JD from Harvard Law. He's been teaching for quite a few years at NYU, doing law. He said that this is interesting. His first experience, though, with representing, he was a law student, first year law student. He was sent to speak to a capital offender on death row, and they intervened too late. It was nothing he could do, and he went there to talk to this fellow. And here at this point, he wasn't even sure if law was his calling. And let's see if I get this right here. It was so touching. So the guy, he told him that there was nothing they could do. And he said, in the last 14 hours, they asked me what I wanted for breakfast, what I wanted for lunch, what I wanted for dinner. The officers want to know if I needed anything. He said, more people asked what I needed than they had the first 19 years of my life. And the question was for Bryan, what about at age 3 when he was physically abused? What about age 7 when he was sexually abused? What about 9 to 10 years old when people were pushing drugs on him? What about 14 when he was homeless? The immorality and the injustice from this lack of humanity. And it's what pushed him, Bryan. He said, no, this is my calling. There was another story he shared later about a guy that he visited early in his law career, and he had to tell him that he was not going to be executed within the next year or so. And he had to repeat it like 3 times to the guy. He goes, you said what? And he kept repeating it. And there's the time with him turned from 1 hour allotment to 2 to 3. And he watched him being hauled back, and they abused this poor guy so bad. Threw the cuffs on him, tightened them, put the chains on his ankles, tightened those. Cuffs, of course, around the back with the chain around the cuffs, which they still do. And it was really tight, and the guy's gasping for breath. They're kicking him down a hallway, and he stopped, planted his feet, and he started singing a hymn. And it was just absolutely inspiring. But Bryan, he quotes some in 1970, 2017. He has some stats. I went and checked them now because I know some of them might be wrong. They mirror in mine. This is my dissertation here on re-entry and mentoring. He was an inspiration for me. He's quoted here a couple of times. My stats in there go back to 2011, but let me throw out a couple stats here, and he would approve of this. In 1972, 300,000 people were in prison or jail. Today, the number is, let's see, 1.9 million are incarcerated. 5.5 million are in the justice system with either parole, probation, or incarceration. This is incredible. It's actually gone down a little bit from a couple years ago, believe it or not. 70 million people have arrest records. You know what that does for job search, doesn't it? Women between 2007 and between 1997 and 2017, women incarcerated has gone up 646%. Now here's a little picture, and this has not changed since his stats in 2017. 1 out of 17 white people will end up behind bars. Black babies born today, 1 out of 3 will end up incarcerated. And like you said, like Bradley said, it's the rich and guilty have more justice than the poor and innocent. He said we need to be willing to be inconvenienced and uncomfortable. We have to get close to people like he did with the. So God's people are called to commit themselves to be close to people in places of suffering. That's what drives him. There's power in proxemics, he said. We need to come close to the people where they are in their pain. Poverty and the infrastructures, in opposing poverty and injustice, we need to be there with them. We need to help them deconstruct the systems. No one is beyond redemption, he said. No one's beyond hope or restoration. We need to recognize the situation and go with compassion. Each of us is more than the worst things we've ever done, he said. Here's some quotes from him. The true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, the condemned. Goes on to say, we are all broken by something. We all have hurt someone. We have been hurt. We have all shared in the extremes of brokenness. When you are broken, he said, you know something about grace. You learn about mercy and forgiveness. You can't get the beautiful R words like redemption, reconciliation, restoration, repair, unless you tell the truth. And it's in response to the monuments and the displays and the books and the libraries being purged of anything that deal with incarceration of slavery, injustice, segregation. If we take this out of our view, the rest of it is not possible. He talks about, if you're going to cure cancer, you got to identify the cancer. And he talks about Germany. In order to graduate from Germany, you need to learn about the Holocaust. And in Germany, they said they could never do capital punishment, based upon their history. Now, his big thing right now has always been fighting against capital punishment, especially for those minorities, mental illness, and the poor and disenfranchised. He was extremely big and pushing for the Supreme Court ruling to outlaw capital punishment for children and for life without parole for those that are underage. But 13 states still have a justice system that can treat kids as adults. New York is one of them. Let's see. He's challenging. It was funny. His mom had got together with Sister Johnny Carr and Rosa Parks, and he met with them. And actually, I think Sister Carr. I think I have actually been on a Zoom call with her, if I'm not mistaken, a number of years ago, with John Lewis. I actually had the privilege of being in a small meeting with them on Zoom with a state committee that I was on, and it was interesting. But they asked him, Bryan, what do you plan to do? And he told me all this stuff he was going to do. It was his list. That doesn't really matter. He was talking about mental illness, about poverty, about inequality in the justice system. It was this huge litany. And Sister Carr reached over and said, that's going to make you tired. And she said, you put her finger up on his face and said, you got to be brave. And that's been inspiration. He keeps repeating this amazing story. He's got a TED Talk that you really got to listen to. It's a little bit older, about 16 years old, Brad? I think. It was 2011. Yeah, somewhere in there. It's called "We Need to Talk About an Injustice." Of all of his stuff, go back and watch this TED Talk. He has he works with he has an organization down in Montgomery, Alabama, that deals mostly with minority capital defenders. But he's got a museum down there, National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama. It is in a former slave auction house. He's honoring 6,500 lynch victims. They thought it was 4,500 on record. They did research. His team found 2,000 more that weren't recorded. And in that museum, he's got these mason jars full of dirt that comes from the area of every single lynching. He was inspired by the Holocaust Museum in Israel of this, and a couple of others. It's very graphic. And he's got another museum that deals with, it's called the Montgomery Square Museum. And it's a display talking about the bus strike. And but the lynchings, 6,500 between 1865 and 1950. One of them was a woman that was lynched in proxy for her brother that they couldn't find. Another one was lynched for knocking on the front door of a white person's house rather than the back. Another one didn't step off the curb when a white person stepped by. Another one had passed a note to a white woman, lynched. There was actually a memorial in there also for Hilda Brooks, a man that they're the busing. You had to walk up the front steps of the bus, pay your fare, get off the bus, go to the back because the first 10 seats were for whites only. This guy he was told to get off the bus, that there were no seats. He paid his fare. He said, I want my money back. He had an argument with the guy. The guy flagged in the cops. They came in and they shot him to death. This was not very long ago. If we forget about these things, like he says, this is extremely dangerous. Let's see. The Legacy Museum goes from enslavement to mass incarceration. and gives a clear connection between past Reconstruction and the high rates of incarceration today. He represents those people, especially who believes are wrongfully convicted, and he's trying to challenge the legal system. He's extremely interested in working for the kids. The man has been an absolute inspiration for me, and he says we need to have compassion. So no one is defined by the worst thing they've ever done. We are all capable of redemption, of restoration, and repair. And we have a justice system which is very, it's retributive, and it's very penal. And I work in this system. And 25 years ago, the pendulum had swung a little bit towards restoration, and I was involved with some programs that were really, really neat. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of traction, and we're back to just the nastiness, and our current political climate has made things far, far worse. Lest we forget, and we're going to fall right back into it all over again. And I am not very hopeful. He's got a little bit more hope, I think, from the interviews earlier. Recently, I think he's starting to lose a little bit of that edge of optimism. I think it's still there. Listened to an interview with Rick. Burns, and he's still hopeful. And I'm trying to Ken Burns. He check out some of those videos though. Bradley, you have anything to add to this? Did I really? Now, Bradley is a law student, and I'm a corrections chaplain, and my dissertation is actually on this very same stuff. And he's been an inspiration for me, and I nominate him as a saint.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Social justice.
Well, all that we carry, whether it's been named aloud or we are holding it still, we lift it up to the love of the universe, trusting love will prevail. And I want to invite you now into a time of prayer and meditation. So I invite you to find a quiet stillness to your body, knowing there will be sounds around us, right? All the creatures in our midst, the wind through the trees. Yes, you can hear the windmills cutting through the windy air. Find a space where you can be comfortable sitting for a moment. Find somewhere you can soften your gaze or feel safe to close your eyes. Trusting and receiving all the good gifts that are around us. As you find some quiet stillness for your body and mind, I'll invite you to hear these words from Pastor Steve Garnis-Holmes, who wrote this poem entitled, "Like This Day." Let me be like this tree, open-faced to the gallery of sky, to the many-fingered wind, to the creatures who take advantage of it. Its roots deepen their belonging in the dark mystery, preserving, insistent without insisting. Let me be like this river, receiving and letting go, flowing with all it's given, happily generous. Let me be like this rock, mountain-born, glacial-born, that one day will be sea sand, but now stands solid, a thing of simple beauty. Let my joy and my calling be that. Let me be like this day, open and ready for what is next. May we be open and ready to receive all that our Maker has for us in this day, in this place, and in our connections and relationships with every other living thing. May it be so. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you want to support Church in the Wild and the work we do in striving for environmental and social justice, just head on over to our website, churchinthewild.org, and click the donate link at the top. There you can make a donation, set yourself up as a recurring supporter, or you can buy something from our Redbubble shop. We're so glad you're with us on this journey, following the Spirit through creation, adventure, and restoration. Until next time.